Marcus Thompson wiped the grease from his hands with an old rag, leaving dark smudges on the already stained fabric. The small auto repair shop on the outskirts of Denver buzzed with the familiar sounds of mechanical work. Wrenches clanged against metal, air compressors hissed, and classic rock played softly from a radio perched on a workbench cluttered with tools. At 32, Marcus had weathered hands that told stories of countless hours under car hoods. His brown eyes held a mixture of determination and exhaustion that came from working double shifts to make ends meet. A faded tattoo peeked out from under his rolled-up sleeve, but he kept it mostly hidden beneath his work shirt. "Dad, can you help me with this math problem?" 8-year-old Emma sat cross-legged on a clean blanket in the corner of the shop, her homework spread out before her. Her curly hair was pulled back in pigtails, and she wore a small pair of safety glasses that Marcus had bought her so she could watch him work without getting anything in her eyes. Marcus set down his wrench and walked over to his daughter, kneeling beside her makeshift study area. "What's giving you trouble, sweetheart?" "It's about fractions. I don't understand why we need to find a common denominator." Emma's pencil hovered over the worksheet, her face scrunched in concentration. "Well, imagine you have different-sized pizza slices," Marcus began, using his hands to illustrate. "If you want to add them together, you need to cut them into the same size pieces first. That's what a common denominator does with fractions." Emma's face lit up with understanding. "Oh, so it's like making everything fair and equal." "Exactly. Right, kiddo?" Marcus ruffled her hair gently. "You're getting so smart." The bell above the shop door chimed, and Marcus looked up to see Mrs. Henderson, one of his regular customers, walking in with her car keys jingling in her hand. "Marcus, I hate to bother you again, but my car is making that strange noise again," she said apologetically. "No bother at all, Mrs. Henderson, that's what I'm here for." Marcus stood up and brushed off his knees. "Emma, why don't you work on the next problem while I take a look?" As Marcus worked on Mrs. Henderson's car, he couldn't help but think about the stack of bills waiting for him at home. The rent was due in 3 days, and Emma needed new school clothes. Her shoes had holes in them, but she never complained. She understood that money was tight even at her young age. After Mrs. Henderson left, satisfied with the repair, Marcus returned to help Emma with her homework. They worked together until closing time, her small hand sometimes reaching out to touch his arm for comfort. She had been doing that more often lately, as if sensing his stress about their financial situation. That evening, they walked the 6 blocks home to their small apartment above a corner store. The building was old, with peeling paint and creaky stairs, but it was clean and safe. Marcus had made sure of that when he chose it 2 years ago after Emma's mother left them. "Dad, are we poor?" Emma asked suddenly as they climbed the stairs. Marcus paused, his hand on the railing. He had been dreading this question, but he knew. Emma was observant enough to notice their careful spending and simple meals. "We don't have a lot of extra money, Em, but we have everything we need. We have each other, a roof over our heads, and food on the table. That makes us richer than a lot of people." Emma nodded thoughtfully. "I don't mind. I like it when it's just us." After dinner, which consisted of spaghetti with simple tomato sauce, Marcus helped Emma with her bath and tucked her into bed. Their apartment was small but cozy, with Emma's drawings taped to the refrigerator and a few family photos on the living room walls. As Emma drifted off to sleep, Marcus sat at their tiny kitchen table with a calculator and a pile of bills. He worked the numbers over and over, trying to figure out how to stretch their money until his next paycheck. The auto repair shop paid him fairly, but it wasn't enough to cover all their expenses and save for emergencies. He pulled out his laptop, an old model he had bought secondhand, and began browsing job listings online. Most of the higher-paying positions required degrees he didn't have or experience in fields he had never worked in. His background was in mechanics, and he was good at what he did, but it seemed like that wasn't enough anymore. Marcus closed the e-off laptop with a sigh and looked around their small apartment. Emma's backpack sat by the door, ready for school the next day. Her homework was neatly organized in folders, and her clothes were laid out for tomorrow. Despite their financial struggles, he made sure she never felt the burden of their situation. He walked to Emma's bedroom door and peeked in. She was sleeping peacefully, her stuffed elephant clutched in her arms. This elephant had been with her since she was a baby, a gift from her grandparents before they passed away. It was one of the few things she had from her life before it was just the two of them. Standing there watching his daughter sleep, Marcus made a silent promise to himself. He would find a way to give her a better life. She deserved more than their current circumstances could provide. She was brilliant, kind, and deserved every opportunity in the world. The next morning brought another day at the shop. Marcus dropped Emma off at school and headed to work, where he would spend the day fixing engines and dreaming of a different future. He didn't know that in just a few days, his life would take an unexpected turn that would challenge everything. He thought he knew about success, worth, and the power of hidden talents. As he unlocked the shop and turned on the lights, Marcus rolled up his sleeves, revealing just a hint of the tattoo that would soon change everything. For now, though, it remained his secret, a reminder of a past life that felt like a distant memory. Today was just another day of honest work, supporting the daughter who meant everything to him. The sleek black limousine pulled up outside Thompson's Auto Repair, with a purr that seemed almost too quiet for such a large vehicle. Marcus glanced up from the engine he was working on, squinting through the morning sunlight streaming through the open garage door. It wasn't unusual for expensive cars to need repairs, but this one looked like it had never seen a speck of dust, let alone required mechanical work. The chauffeur stepped out first, adjusting his cap and moving around to open the rear door with practiced precision. From the back seat emerged a man in his 50s, wearing a tailored navy suit that probably cost more than Marcus made in 3 months. His silver hair was perfectly styled, and his Italian leather shoes clicked against the concrete as he approached the shop. "Excuse me," the man called out in a crisp, authoritative voice. "I need to speak with someone about aircraft engine maintenance." Marcus straightened up, wiping his hands on his coveralls. "I'm sorry, sir, but we only work on cars here. This is an automotive repair shop." The man's eyes swept over Marcus, taking in his grease-stained clothes and calloused hands with barely concealed disdain. "I see that. However, I was told that someone here might have experience with jet engines. My private aircraft is having issues and my usual technician is unavailable." "I'm afraid you've been given incorrect information," Marcus replied politely. "Like I said, we specialize in cars, trucks, motorcycles. Aircraft engines are a completely different field." The man stepped closer, and Marcus could smell expensive cologne mixed with the scent of leather from his briefcase. A gold nameplate on the briefcase read, "Richard Blackwood, CEO, Blackwood Enterprises." "Listen," Blackwood said, his tone becoming increasingly condescending. "I don't have time for games. My jet needs to be operational by tomorrow for a crucial business meeting in Seattle. I'm willing to pay handsomely for someone who knows what they're doing." Emma looked up from her homework corner, watching the exchange with curious eyes. She had learned to read adult emotions well for her age, and she could sense the tension building between her father and this stranger. "Mr. Blackwood, I understand you're in a difficult situation," Marcus said, maintaining his professional demeanor. "But I honestly can't help you. Jet engines require specialized training and certification that I don't have. You'd be better off calling Denver International Airport. They'll have qualified technicians." Blackwood's face flushed slightly, his jaw tightening. "Do you have any idea who I am? Blackwood Enterprises owns half the commercial real estate in this city. I've built a fortune by recognizing talent and getting things done, and right now, I need someone who can think outside the box." "I'm sure you're a very important man," Marcus replied calmly, "but importance doesn't change the fact that I work on cars, not airplanes. Those are two very different skill sets." The CEO's expression shifted from frustration to outright contempt. He looked around the modest shop, taking in the outdated equipment, the oil stains on the concrete floor, and Emma sitting quietly in the corner with her school books. "I should have known better than to come to a place like this," Blackwood said with a bitter laugh. "What was I thinking, asking a grease monkey for help with sophisticated aviation technology? You probably couldn't even spell turbofan, let alone understand how one works." Marcus felt his muscles tense, but he kept his voice steady. "Sir, there's no need for insults. I'm just trying to be honest about my limitations." "Limitations?" Blackwood repeated mockingly. That's exactly what I'd expect from someone in your position. No vision, no ambition, content to spend your life crawling around under broken-down cars in a rundown shop. Emma's pencil stopped moving across her homework page. She could hear the mean tone in the man's voice, even if she didn't understand all the words. Blackwood gestured dismissively at the shop's interior. Look at this place, look at yourself. You're probably living paycheck to paycheck, struggling to keep the lights on. And that child over there probably doesn't even have proper school supplies because Daddy can't afford them. Marcus took a step forward, his hands clenching into fists. That's enough. You need to leave. Oh, did I hit a nerve? Blackwood's smile was cruel. The truth hurts, doesn't it? You're just another blue-collar worker who peaked in high school. This is as good as your life gets, and deep down you know it. The CEO straightened his tie with smug satisfaction. I employ hundreds of people like you. Factory workers, maintenance staff, security guards. The difference is, they know their place and don't waste my time pretending they can handle complex high-level work. Marcus's jaw worked silently as he fought to control his temper. Behind him he could hear Emma quietly packing up her homework, sensing that something bad was happening. My daughter is right there, Marcus said in a low, warning voice. I suggest you watch what you say. Blackwood glanced over at Emma and shrugged indifferently. She might as well learn early what kind of life she's in for. Children of mechanics become mechanics, assuming they're lucky enough to find steady work at all. The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. He had spent years worrying about Emma's future, working extra hours to save money for her education, encouraging her dreams of becoming a scientist or doctor. To hear this stranger dismiss her potential so casually made his blood boil. You don't know anything about me or my daughter, Marcus said through gritted teeth. I know enough, Blackwood replied, adjusting his expensive watch. I know you're a single father struggling to make ends meet. I know you drive an old pickup truck that probably breaks down more than the cars you fix. And I know that fancy colleges don't give scholarships to kids whose parents can't even afford to take them to Disney World. The silence that followed was thick with tension. Marcus stood perfectly still, his entire body coiled like a spring. His right hand moved unconsciously toward his left forearm, where his rolled-up sleeve covered something that Blackwood hadn't yet noticed. Emma stood up slowly, her homework clutched in her small hands. She walked over to stand beside her father, reaching up to slip her hand into his. The simple gesture of support from his 8-year-old daughter was almost enough to break Marcus's composure. Blackwood noticed the exchange and chuckled coldly. How touching. Well, I've wasted enough time here. I'll find a real professional to handle my aircraft maintenance. Someone who actually understands complex engineering instead of just changing oil and rotating tires. As the CEO turned to leave, he paused and looked back over his shoulder. By the way, you might want to teach your daughter some marketable skills. The world doesn't need any more mechanics fixing rusty old cars in dead-end shops. It was at that moment that Marcus's self-control finally snapped. His left hand moved to his right forearm and began rolling up his sleeve, revealing something that would change Richard Blackwood's smug expression in a matter of seconds. Marcus rolled up his right sleeve slowly, deliberately, his eyes never leaving Blackwood's face. The fabric moved higher, revealing a detailed tattoo that covered most of his forearm. It wasn't the typical eagle or skull that many mechanics had. This was different. This was precise. The tattoo showed the cross-sectional diagram of a jet engine, complete with technical specifications, part numbers, and maintenance intervals written in small, precise lettering around the detailed artwork. At the bottom, in elegant script, were the words 324th Fighter Wing, and below that, Staff Sergeant Marcus Thompson, USAF. Blackwood's confident stride faltered. His mouth opened slightly as he took in the intricate details of the tattoo. The smugness drained from his face like water from a broken dam. What exactly did you say about turbofans? Marcus asked quietly, his voice carrying a dangerous edge. Because this turbofan engine diagram happens to be tattooed on my arm. Every bolt, every bearing, every temperature specification. I got it done after my 3rd deployment. when I was the lead maintenance supervisor for an entire squadron of F-16 Fighting Falcons. The silence in the garage was deafening. Even the radio seemed to have stopped playing. Emma squeezed her father's hand tighter, not fully understanding what was happening but sensing that something important was taking place. Blackwood's Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed hard. I didn't realize. You didn't realize what? Marcus stepped closer, and now Blackwood could see other smaller tattoos peeking out from under his shirt collar, military insignia, squadron patches, dates that meant something important. You didn't realize that the grease monkey you were insulting spent 8 years maintaining the most sophisticated aircraft engines in the world? Marcus's voice grew stronger, more confident with each word. You see, Mr. Blackwood, jet engines are actually simpler than car engines in many ways. Fewer moving parts, more predictable maintenance schedules. When you're responsible for keeping million-dollar fighter jets in the air, with pilots' lives depending on your work, you tend to remember every detail. The CEO's briefcase slipped slightly in his suddenly sweaty grip. Staff Sergeant Thompson, I had no idea about your military background. Of course you didn't, Marcus interrupted. You took one look at my coveralls and decided you knew everything about me. You saw a single father working in a small shop and assumed I was some high school dropout who never amounted to anything. Emma watched her father with wide eyes, seeing a side of him she had never witnessed before. He stood taller now, his shoulders, back, and there was something in his voice that reminded her of the heroes in her favorite movies. Let me tell you about your jet engine problem, Marcus continued, his technical knowledge flowing like water. Based on your description of operational issues, you're probably dealing with either a fuel nozzle blockage in the combustion chamber or a bearing failure in the high-pressure compressor. Both are common problems in business jets that don't get flown regularly enough to keep the systems properly cycled. Blackwood's mouth hung open. How could you possibly know that without even seeing the aircraft? Because I've diagnosed and repaired that exact problem probably 50 times, Marcus replied matter-of-factly. Gulfstream G550, right? I can tell by the sound your driver described when you were on the phone earlier. The whine-to-whistle ratio is distinctive for that particular engine type. The CEO nodded slowly, his earlier arrogance completely evaporated. Yes, it's a G550. My maintenance chief said the same thing about the fuel nozzles, but he's in Europe and can't get back for 3 days. The repair takes about 6 hours if you know what you're doing, Marcus said. 4 hours if you have the right tools and a good assistant. He looked down at Emma, who was still holding his hand. Unfortunately, I can't leave my daughter, and aircraft maintenance isn't something you do with a child around for safety reasons. Blackwood shifted uncomfortably, realizing the magnitude of his earlier insults. Staff Sergeant, Mr. Thompson, I owe you a tremendous apology. My behavior was inexcusable. Your behavior was revealing, Marcus corrected him. You showed me exactly how you see people like me. People who work with their hands, people who don't wear expensive suits, people who live in small apartments and drive old trucks. The truth of those words hit Blackwood like a punch to the stomach. He had spent his entire adult life building wealth and success, but somewhere along the way, he had forgotten that success came in many forms. The man standing in front of him had served his country, mastered complex technical skills, and was raising a daughter on his own while maintaining his dignity and work ethic. You're absolutely right, Blackwood admitted quietly. I made assumptions based on appearances, and I was completely wrong. Not just about your qualifications, but about your character and worth as a person. Emma tugged on her father's hand. Dad, what's a staff sergeant? Marcus knelt down to her level, his expression softening. It's a rank I earned in the Air Force, sweetheart. Before you were born, Daddy worked on airplanes for the military. Like the ones that fly really high and really fast? Exactly like those ones. Marcus smiled at his daughter's excitement. Some of the fastest airplanes in the world. Blackwood watched this exchange, feeling smaller with each passing moment. Here was a man who had served his country with distinction, mastered highly complex technical skills, and was now devoting himself completely to raising his daughter with love and patience. The contrast with his own assumptions was humiliating. Mr. Thompson, Blackwood said carefully, I would like to make this right. Not just the repair of my aircraft, but everything. My comments about your daughter, about your life, about your worth. They were unforgivable. Marcus stood up, studying the CEO's face for signs of sincerity. Words are easy, Mr. Blackwood, especially when you need something. You're right to be skeptical, Blackwood acknowledged, but I'd like the opportunity to prove that I can be better than the man you met a few minutes ago. Will you help me with my aircraft? I'll pay you fairly for your expertise, and I'll treat you with the respect you deserve. Marcus looked down at Emma, who was watching the conversation with fascination. She had seen her father insulted and humiliated, and now she was seeing him treated with respect and recognition. The lesson wasn't lost on her 8-year-old mind. The going rate for emergency aircraft maintenance is $200 per hour, Marcus said finally, plus parts and transportation costs, and I'll need childcare arrangements for Emma. Done, Blackwood said immediately. Whatever you need. And Mr. Thompson, thank you. For your service, for your expertise, and for giving me a chance to make this right. As they began discussing the logistics of the repair, neither man could have predicted how this encounter would change both of their lives forever. The private hangar at Denver International Airport hummed with activity as Marcus walked through the massive space, his tool bag slung over his shoulder. Emma walked beside him, wearing a pair of child-sized safety glasses and clutching a coloring book that Blackwood had brought for her. The CEO had arranged for a children's area to be set up in the hangar's office, complete with comfortable seating and educational toys. Wow, Dad, it's so big, Emma whispered, staring up at the sleek Gulfstream G550 that dominated the hangar. The aircraft's polished surface reflected the overhead lights like a mirror, and its engines looked impossibly complex compared to the car engines she was used to seeing in her father's shop. It is big, Marcus agreed, running his hand along the aircraft's fuselage with the familiarity of someone who had done this thousands of times before. But underneath all that fancy paint and luxury interior, it's just a machine with moving parts, just like the cars we work on. Blackwood approached them, having traded his expensive suit for khakis and a polo shirt. He looked uncomfortable in the casual clothes, as if he wasn't sure how to present himself without his usual armor of formal business attire. I've arranged for Mrs. Patterson, my assistant, to keep Emma company while you work, Blackwood said. She raised 3 children of her own and came highly recommended as a babysitter. A kind-looking woman in her 50s emerged from the office area, extending her hand to Emma with a warm smile. Hello, dear. I brought some puzzles and art supplies. Would you like to see? Emma looked up at her father for permission. Go ahead, sweetheart. I'll be right here working on the airplane. As Emma settled into the office area with Mrs. Patterson, Marcus began his inspection of the aircraft. He opened access panels with practiced efficiency, his hands moving with the muscle memory of someone who had performed these motions countless times in military hangars around the world. The problem is definitely in the fuel system, Marcus announced after 30 minutes of investigation. Your fuel nozzles are partially clogged, but there's also a secondary issue with the fuel pump that your maintenance chief missed. If you had taken off tomorrow, you probably would have experienced a flameout over the Rocky Mountains. Blackwood paled at the thought. How serious would that have been? In a single-engine aircraft, it would have been catastrophic, Marcus explained, pulling out a diagnostic tablet and connecting it to the aircraft's systems. In a twin engine like this, you would have made an emergency landing, but it could have been very dangerous depending on weather conditions and available airports. As Marcus worked, Blackwood found himself studying the man he had so thoroughly misjudged just hours earlier. Thompson's movements were precise and confident, his knowledge clearly encyclopedic. When he explained technical concepts, he did so with the patience of a natural teacher, making complex systems understandable, even to someone with no aviation background. How did you end up working on cars instead of aircraft? Blackwood asked, during a break in the repair work. Marcus paused in his work, considering the question. After Emma was born, I needed stability. Military life meant deployments, constant moves, time away from home. When her mother left us, I realized Emma needed a father who would be there every day, not someone who might be called overseas for months at a time. That must have been a difficult decision. The hardest decision I ever made, Marcus admitted. I loved the Air Force. I was good at my job. I had opportunities for advancement, and the benefits were excellent. But Emma needed me more than the military did. Blackwood watched as Marcus carefully removed the damaged fuel nozzles, each movement deliberate and sure. Do you ever regret it? Marcus glanced toward the office where Emma was laughing at something Mrs. Patterson had said. Look at that smile. How could I regret anything that keeps her happy and safe? The repair work continued throughout the afternoon. Marcus explained each step of the process, sharing insights about engine design and maintenance that fascinated Blackwood despite himself. The CEO found himself taking notes, asking questions, and gaining a new appreciation for the complexity of the work. This bearing replacement requires precision to within thousandths of an inch, Marcus explained as he worked with delicate instruments. In the military, we had saying, close enough isn't good enough when lives are on the line. That's a philosophy I've carried into everything I do. Emma periodically checked on her father's progress, her curiosity about the aircraft growing with each visit. Marcus would stop what he was doing to answer her questions, explaining concepts in terms an 8-year-old could understand. The engine sucks in air, squeezes it really tight, adds fuel and fire, and then pushes it out the back really fast, he told her when she asked how jet engines work. It's like blowing up a balloon and then letting it go, except we control the balloon really carefully. That's so cool, Emma exclaimed. Is it hard to learn how to fix them? It takes a lot of studying and practice, Marcus replied. But if you're interested in how things work and you're willing to work hard, you can learn to do anything. Blackwood overheard this conversation and felt another pang of guilt about his earlier comments regarding Emma's future prospects. This child was clearly bright and curious, and her father was encouraging her interests rather than limiting her dreams. As the sun began to set, Marcus completed the final systems check. The engines purred to life with a smooth, powerful sound that was music to his trained ear. All the diagnostic readings were perfect, and the test cycle showed that both engines were operating within optimal parameters. You're good to go, Marcus announced, wiping his hands on a clean rag. The repairs should hold for several thousand flight hours, but I'd recommend having your regular maintenance chief inspect my work when he returns from Europe. Blackwood nodded, then pulled out his checkbook. What do I owe you for the repair? Marcus calculated the hours, parts, and materials in his head. $1,400 for labor, $600 for parts, and $50 for transportation. $2,050 total. As Blackwood wrote the check, he realized that this amount represented probably 2 months of income for Marcus at the auto repair shop. The disparity seemed obscene considering the level of skill and expertise that had just been demonstrated. Mr. Thompson, Blackwood said as he handed over the payment, I have a proposition for you. But before I make it, I want you to know that this has nothing to do with guilt or charity. This is purely a business decision based on what I've witnessed today. Marcus looked at him skeptically. What kind of proposition? I'd like to offer you a position as the Chief Maintenance Supervisor for Blackwood Enterprises' fleet of corporate aircraft. We currently contract out all our aviation maintenance, but I'm realizing we need someone with your expertise and integrity overseeing our operations. The offer hung in the air between them like a challenge. Emma looked up from her coloring book, sensing that something important was happening, but not understanding the full implications. The salary would be $90,000 per year to start, with full benefits, healthcare, and a retirement plan, Blackwood continued. You'd have your own hangar, a staff of 3 technicians, and the opportunity to work on some of the most advanced corporate aircraft in the world. Marcus felt his heart race, but he kept his expression neutral. That's a generous offer, Mr. Blackwood, but I have to ask, is this because of my qualifications or because you feel bad about what happened earlier? Blackwood met his eyes steadily. It's because I just watched you perform a complex repair that my current contractors quoted at $8,000 and you did it better, faster, and for a quarter of the price. It's because you caught a potentially catastrophic problem that a certified maintenance facility missed. And it's because I need people with your attention to detail and professional standards working for my company. The weight of the decision settled on Marcus's shoulders. This offer could change everything for Emma and him. Better schools, a larger apartment, college savings, security for the future. But it also meant leaving the familiar comfort of his small shop and stepping into a corporate world that might not accept him for who he really was. As he looked at his daughter, happily coloring a picture of an airplane, Marcus realized that this moment would define the trajectory of both their lives. 3 months later, Marcus stood in his new office overlooking the corporate hangar facility, watching his team of technicians perform routine maintenance on a fleet of business jets. The office was spacious and modern, with large windows that provided a clear view of the work bay below. His desk held family photos, technical manuals, and a coffee mug that Emma had painted for him as a congratulations gift. The transition to his new role had been smoother than expected, though not without its challenges. Some of the existing staff had been skeptical of his appointment, wondering if nepotism or politics had played a role in his hiring. Those doubts had quickly evaporated as Marcus demonstrated his expertise and leadership skills. "Dad, this place is amazing." Emma bounced into his office after school, her backpack sliding off her shoulder as she took in the view of the hangar. She had been spending her afternoons at the facility, doing homework in Marcus's office or exploring the educational exhibits that Blackwood had installed to make the workplace more family-friendly. "How was school today, kiddo?" Marcus asked, saving the maintenance report he had been working on. "Great. Mrs. Rodriguez said my science project about jet engines was the best in the class. She wants me to enter it in the district science fair." Emma's excitement was infectious as she pulled a blue ribbon from her backpack. Marcus felt his chest swell with pride. "That's fantastic, Em. I'm so proud of you." The science project had been Emma's idea entirely. After visiting the hangar several times and listening to her father explain aircraft systems, she had become fascinated with the principles of flight. Her project demonstrated how different wing shapes affected lift and drag, using a small wind tunnel that Marcus had helped her build. "Mr. Blackwood said he wants to sponsor my entry in the state competition if I win at district level," Emma continued, settling into the comfortable chair beside Marcus's desk. "He said the company has a fund for supporting education." Over the past 3 months, Blackwood had proven to be more than just an employer. He had become a mentor and, surprisingly, something approaching a friend. The initial shame he had felt about his behavior had evolved into genuine respect and admiration for Marcus and his daughter. A knock on the office door interrupted their conversation. Sarah Mitchell, the company's human resources director, entered with a warm smile. "Marcus, do you have a few minutes? There's something I'd like to discuss with you." "Of course." "Emma, why don't you start on your homework while I talk with Ms. Mitchell?" As Emma settled in with her books, Sarah took a seat across from Marcus's desk. "I wanted to talk to you about the quarterly performance reviews. Your team's efficiency ratings are the highest in company history, and our aircraft availability has improved by 37% since you took over." Marcus felt a flush of satisfaction at the recognition. "The team is really clicking." Once they saw that I wasn't trying to change everything just for the sake of change, they started sharing their own ideas for improvements. "That's exactly what I wanted to discuss," Sarah continued. "Mr. Blackwood and I have been talking about expanding your role. We're considering creating a new position, Director of Technical Operations. It would involve overseeing not just aircraft maintenance, but also the technical aspects of our facilities management and fleet vehicle operations." The offer represented another significant step up in responsibility and salary. Marcus had already been able to move Emma and himself to a better apartment in a safer neighborhood with good schools. This promotion would provide even more security for their future. "What would the timeline look like?" Marcus asked. "The position would be effective at the beginning of next quarter, with a salary increase to $120,000 per year. You'd have your own department, a larger staff, and input into major equipment purchasing decisions." Emma looked up from her homework, sensing that another important conversation was taking place. In the months since her father's career change, she had become more confident and outgoing. Her grades had improved, and she had made new friends at her better-funded school. After Sarah left, Marcus and Emma walked through the hangar together, as had become their daily routine. The technicians greeted them warmly, and several stopped to ask Emma about her schoolwork or share stories about their own families. "Dad, can I ask you something?" Emma said as they watched one of the teams replacing an engine component. "Always, sweetheart. Are you happier now than you were at the old shop?" The question caught Marcus off guard. He had been so focused on the practical benefits of the career change that he hadn't really examined his emotional state. "You know what, Em? I think I am happier. Not because of the money or the fancy office, but because I feel like I'm using all the skills I learned in the Air Force again. I feel valuable." Emma nodded thoughtfully. "I like seeing you smile more, and I like that people here treat you like you're important." That evening, Marcus received an unexpected phone call from Richard Blackwood. "Marcus, I hope I'm not calling too late. I wanted to discuss something with you." "Not at all, Mr. Blackwood. What's on your mind?" "I've been thinking about our first meeting, and I keep coming back to something that bothers me. Not just my behavior, which was inexcusable, but the bigger picture of how we value people in our society." Marcus settled into his living room chair, curious about where this conversation was heading. "I've spent my entire career focused on profit margins and efficiency," Blackwood continued. "But watching you work, seeing how you interact with your team and raise your daughter, I've realized that real value isn't always reflected in someone's paycheck or job title." "That's very thoughtful of you to say." "It's more than thoughtful, Marcus. It's led me to a decision. I want to start a foundation that provides career transition assistance for military veterans. Job training, educational scholarships, networking, opportunities. I'd like you to help me design the program." The scope of what Blackwood was proposing was enormous. "That sounds like it could help a lot of people." "I hope so. I keep thinking about how many talented individuals are out there, working jobs that don't utilize their full potential simply because they don't have the right connections or opportunities. People like you were before we met." After the call ended, Marcus sat in the quiet of his apartment, processing everything that had happened. 6 months ago, he had been struggling to pay rent and worried about Emma's future. Tonight, he was being asked to help design a program that could change the lives of thousands of veterans. Emma appeared in the doorway in her pajamas, ready for her bedtime story. As Marcus tucked her in, she looked up at him with serious eyes. "Dad, that mean man who came to the shop. He was wrong about everything, wasn't he?" Marcus smoothed her hair gently. "He was wrong about some things, yes. But you know what? Sometimes, people need to be wrong before they can learn to be better." Mr. Blackwood learned something important that day, too. What did he learn? He learned that you can't judge someone by their clothes or their job or where they live. You have to look at their heart, their character, and their actions. Emma yawned sleepily. "I'm glad he learned that, because you're the smartest, bravest dad in the whole world." As Marcus turned off her bedroom light, he reflected on the unexpected turns his life had taken. A chance encounter with an arrogant CEO had revealed opportunities he never knew existed, but more importantly, it had reminded him of his own worth and potential. The foundation project would officially launch in 6 months, with Marcus serving as the technical advisor and program coordinator. Emma's college fund was growing steadily, and she was thriving in her new school environment. The small auto repair shop seemed like a memory from another lifetime, though Marcus still drove by occasionally to check on his former coworkers. Standing in his daughter's doorway, watching her sleep peacefully, Marcus touched the tattoo on his forearm through his shirt sleeve. The detailed diagram of the jet engine had been his reminder of who he used to be. Now it served as a bridge between his past and his future, a symbol of skills and knowledge that no one could take away from him. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities. But tonight, Marcus Thompson, former staff sergeant, current director of technical operations and full-time father, was exactly where he belonged. 1 year after their fateful first meeting, Marcus stood at the podium in the grand ballroom of Denver's most prestigious hotel. Before him sat nearly 300 people, business leaders, military veterans, government officials, and members of the media. The occasion was the official launch of the Blackwood Foundation for Veteran Career Transition, and Marcus had been asked to deliver the keynote address. Emma sat in the front row, wearing a new blue dress that made her look mature, beyond her 9 years. Beside her sat Richard Blackwood, who had become an unlikely father figure and mentor to both of them. The past year had transformed all their lives in ways none of them could have predicted. "Ladies and gentlemen," Marcus began, his voice steady, despite the butterflies in his stomach, "I want to tell you about a conversation that changed 3 lives and hopefully will change many more." He looked out at the audience, seeing faces that ranged from curious to skeptical to hopeful. Many were veterans themselves, men and women who had served their country with distinction, but struggled to find their place in civilian careers. 15 months ago, I was working in a small auto repair shop, living paycheck to paycheck and worried about my daughter's future. I had skills and experience that I thought no one valued anymore. I was wrong, but it took a very difficult encounter to show me just how wrong I was. Marcus caught Blackwood's eye and saw the older man nod encouragingly. Their relationship had evolved far beyond employer and employee. Blackwood had become a trusted friend, and more importantly, he had proven through his actions that people could genuinely change and grow. A man came into my shop that day looking for help with his aircraft. When I told him I couldn't assist him, he made assumptions about my capabilities, my intelligence, and my worth as a person. He looked at my work clothes and my modest shop and decided I was beneath his notice. The audience was completely silent, hanging on every word. But that man made a mistake that day. He failed to ask the right questions. He failed to look beyond surface appearances. And because of that failure, he almost missed out on solving his problem, and I almost missed out on the opportunity of a lifetime. Emma beamed up at her father with undisguised pride. In the past year, she had watched him flourish in ways that went far beyond professional success. He was more confident, more at peace with himself, and more hopeful about their future together. The foundation we're launching today is based on a simple principle. Talent and dedication exist everywhere, but opportunity does not. Military veterans possess skills, discipline, and experience that our economy desperately needs. But too often those qualities are overlooked, because they don't come packaged in the expected wrapper. Marcus paused to take a sip of water, gathering his thoughts for the most important part of his speech. This foundation will provide career counseling, skills assessment, educational scholarships, and job placement assistance to veterans transitioning to civilian careers. But more than that, it will work to educate employers about the incredible resource they're ignoring when they fail to recognize military experience. The applause was warm and sustained. Marcus could see several veterans in the audience wiping their eyes, clearly moved by the message of hope and recognition. I want to introduce you to the man whose initial misjudgment led to this foundation's creation. Richard Blackwood could have walked away from our encounter embarrassed but unchanged. Instead, he chose to examine his own biases and do something meaningful about them. Blackwood stood and joined Marcus at the podium, looking nervous but determined. The past year had humbled him in the best possible way, showing him that true leadership meant lifting others up rather than looking down on them. "When I met Marcus Thompson," Blackwood began, "I was a successful businessman who thought success gave me the right to judge others. I was wrong about that, and I was wrong about him. But being wrong gave me the opportunity to learn something invaluable." He looked out at the audience, his voice growing stronger with each word. "Every person in this room has value that goes beyond their job title or bank account. Every veteran here has served something larger than themselves and developed skills that our businesses need. My job, our job as leaders, is to recognize that value and create opportunities for it to flourish." The foundation had already begun its work in pilot programs across 3 states. Early results were promising. An 83% job placement rate for participants with average salary increases of 47% over their previous civilian employment. More importantly, exit surveys showed that 96% of participants felt their military experience was properly valued and utilized in their new positions. After the formal presentation, Marcus mingled with the attendees, sharing stories and answering questions. He met dozens of veterans whose experiences mirrored his own, highly skilled individuals working in jobs that didn't fully utilize their capabilities, not because they lacked talent, but because they lacked the right opportunities, or connections. "Daddy, I'm so proud of you," Emma whispered when she found a quiet moment with her father. "All these people are here because of what you did." "What we did, sweetheart," Marcus corrected her. "You were part of this story from the beginning. Your strength and love kept me going when things were difficult." Later that evening, as the crowd dispersed and the hotel staff began cleaning up, Marcus, Emma, and Blackwood sat together at a small table, reflecting on the day's events. "You know," Blackwood said thoughtfully, "I've been thinking about that day in your shop. If you had been someone else, someone who didn't have the confidence to show me that tattoo, I might never have learned this lesson." "I almost didn't," Marcus admitted. "For a moment there, I was ready to just let you walk away thinking whatever you wanted to think. But then I realized that staying silent wasn't protecting Emma from your prejudice. It was just accepting it." Emma looked between the two men who had become such important figures in her life. "I think everything happened exactly the way it was supposed to happen, like it was meant to be." 6 months later, the foundation had expanded to operate in 12 states with plans for national coverage within 2 years. Marcus had been promoted again, this time to Vice President of Operations for all of Blackwood Enterprises, with specific responsibility for implementing veteran hiring initiatives across all company divisions. Emma had won the state science fair with her aviation project and had been invited to present her research at a national symposium for young scientists. Her college fund was fully secured, and she had begun talking about studying aerospace engineering, inspired by her father's work and her own growing fascination with flight. The small auto repair shop where this story began had been purchased by Blackwood Enterprises and converted into a training facility for the Foundation's automotive technician program. A plaque by the front door read, "Success is not about where you start, but about how far you're willing to go." Marcus still wore his jet engine tattoo with pride, no longer hidden beneath long sleeves. It had become a conversation starter, a teaching tool, and a reminder that sometimes the most important things about ourselves are the ones that aren't immediately visible to others. The tattoo that had once represented a chapter of his life he thought was closed had instead opened doors to a future he never could have imagined. Standing in his corner office 50 floors above downtown Denver, watching aircraft trace their paths across the evening sky, Marcus Thompson reflected on the unexpected journey that had brought him here. A moment of confrontation had become a catalyst for transformation, not just for himself, but for hundreds of other veterans who were now finding their own paths to success and recognition. Emma's laughter echoed from the adjoining conference room where she was working on homework, surrounded by the technical manuals and aircraft models that had become their shared passion. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to help other veterans find their place in the civilian world, and new chances to prove that potential exists everywhere, if people are willing to look for it. The mechanic had become an executive, the single father had become a leader, and the man who had once hidden his talents had become an advocate for others whose abilities were waiting to be discovered. Sometimes, Marcus thought, the most important journeys begin with someone telling you that you're not good enough, and end with you proving them wrong in ways they never could have expected.